Snow drifted through the midnight streets like ash from some unseen fire, softening the edges of the glass towers that ruled the skyline. Serena Vale stood outside her office building, shoulders squared against the bitter wind, her breath clouding the night air like steam. It was Christmas Eve, but to her it felt like just another quarter's end. Another deadline, another wind to chase. The revolving doors behind her whispered shut, cutting off the hum of late-night cleaners and distant elevator chimes. Serena didn't even flinch at the cold. Years of building an empire had hardened her against discomfort. What unsettled her now was not the wind, not the hour, but a sound she hadn't expected to hear in this pristine financial district. A small, uncertain voice. She turned her head and saw him. A man in a torn coat, the color indiscernible under streetlight, stood by the trash can outside the coffee kiosk. Beside him, a little girl clutched his hand as though it were the only warm thing in the world. Her boots were too thin for this weather. The pink wool of her hat sagged from wear. Serena's eyes narrowed, not in judgment, but in curiosity. Men like him didn't belong here, in front of Vale Global's mirrored facade. The man glanced up once, wary, then bent again to search through discarded paper cups and half-eaten sandwiches. His face, sharp-boned and unshaven, spoke of nights without sleep and weeks without safety. And then Serena heard it, the words that stopped her breath cold. "Daddy, is Santa mad at us?" The little girl's voice was almost swallowed by the wind, but Serena caught it all the same. She watched the man's jaw tighten as he crouched down to meet his daughter's eyes. He didn't see Serena watching from a few yards away. He only saw the small hands trembling inside threadbare mittens. "No, Elara," he whispered, forcing a smile that couldn't reach his eyes. "Santa's just busy this year." Serena felt something shift inside her chest, an unfamiliar crack in the armor she had spent a decade forging. For reasons she couldn't explain, her feet moved before her mind could object. She crossed the icy pavement toward them, her heels clicking sharp against the stone, every step echoing louder than it should have in the sleeping city. The man saw her and straightened instantly, his shoulders squared in quiet defiance. He didn't look away, though there was a flicker of caution in his eyes, as if he'd met people like her before, people who stared too long or judged too quickly. Serena spoke without thinking. "It's freezing. You shouldn't be out here with a child." His mouth twitched, not quite into a smile, not quite into anger. "We'll manage." His voice was deep, steady, but Serena could hear the exhaustion threaded through it. "You're not managing," she said flatly. Her tone had the same clipped precision she used in boardrooms, though she hadn't intended it. "When was the last time either of you ate?" The question landed harder than she expected. The little girl looked up at her father as though waiting for him to answer. His throat worked, but no words came. Serena noticed the way his coat barely closed, the way his gloveless hands were red from cold. "I'm not looking for charity," he said finally, low and firm. "We're fine." Serena felt a sharp flash of irritation, not at him, but at herself, for standing here in the cold, arguing with a stranger. She had a car waiting. She had a penthouse stocked with food and warmth, and yet she couldn't walk away. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice softening. He hesitated, then answered, "Callum. Callum Draven." He gestured down to the child who was peeking shyly at Serena from behind his coat. "This is my daughter, Elara." The little girl's eyes were wide and dark, impossibly steady for someone so young. Serena knelt slightly, the hem of her wool coat brushing the pavement. "Hi, Elara," she said. "How old are you?" "6," Elara murmured, voice small as a snowfall. "6," Serena repeated as though tasting the number. "That's a big age." Callum shifted uncomfortably, glancing down the street as though ready to disappear at the first sign of trouble. Serena saw the way his body curled protectively around his daughter, as though the whole world might try to take her away. Serena straightened, pushing down the strange ache in her chest. "Come with me," she said, the words sounding almost like an order. "There's a diner around the corner that stays open all night." "You both need something hot." Callum shook his head. "I said we're fine." Serena studied him for a long moment. Pride, she thought. He'd rather freeze than be pitied. And yet, when Elara shivered and her lips trembled, Serena caught the fleeting glance Callum gave toward the glowing diner sign at the far end of the street. Hunger always betrayed even the strongest pride. Serena softened her voice, letting some of the steel drop. "It's just dinner," she said, "not charity." A Christmas Eve truce between strangers. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the wind rattling the empty coffee cups on the sidewalk. Then Callum exhaled, slow and heavy as though surrendering to something larger than both of them. "Fine," he said at last. "Just dinner." Serena almost smiled. She didn't know yet that this single walk to a quiet diner would begin the longest, most unexpected night of her life. A night that would test not just her generosity, but everything she thought she knew about worth, about love, about what it really meant to be rich. The wind followed them down the sidewalk, chasing scraps of paper and twisting flakes of snow through the pools of yellow light spilling from the street lamps. Serena walked a half step ahead, her stride brisk and purposeful, though she kept glancing back to make sure Callum and Elara were keeping pace. The diner sat on the corner, a stubborn little place with fogged windows and a neon sign that hummed faintly in the cold. It looked out of place in this district of glass and steel, but its warmth was visible even from across the street. Silhouettes of late-night cab drivers and students hunched over steaming mugs, the faint clatter of plates behind the glass. As they neared the door, Serena felt the weight of a gaze. That familiar black car, low, sleek, windows tinted dark, was idling at the curb they'd just passed. For a moment, the driver didn't move, just watched. Serena's jaw tightened. It wasn't unusual for her to be shadowed. High-profile deals bred enemies as easily as allies. But tonight, it felt different. She pushed the thought aside and opened the diner door, a small bell chiming overhead. Heat washed over them instantly, the kind of warmth that makes fingers sting after too long in the cold. Elara's eyes widened at the smell of frying butter and strong coffee. Callum hesitated on the threshold, as though unsure whether he belonged. Serena caught the motion and turned to meet his gaze, steady and unapologetic. "You first," she said softly. A waitress with kind eyes and a harried expression led them to a booth near the back. Serena slid into one side, her tailored coat still buttoned, while Callum guided Elara into the opposite bench. The little girl pressed her small hands against the window, watching the snow fall. Menus appeared, but Serena barely glanced at hers. "Get whatever you want," she said, looking directly at Elara. The child looked to her father for permission. Callum's lips pressed into a line, but after a beat, he nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart." "Pancakes," Elara whispered, almost as if afraid to say it too loud. With strawberries?" Serena smiled, a real one this time. "Good choice." She closed her menu. "3 hot chocolates, too," she added to the waitress, "extra whipped cream." As the waitress left, Callum leaned back, crossing his arms, studying Serena as though trying to decode her. "Why are you doing this?" Serena raised a brow. "Feeding a child on Christmas Eve?" "It's hardly suspicious." "That's not what I mean," he said. His voice was low but steady, the words shaped by both gratitude and wariness. "People like you don't usually stop. They don't see people like us." Serena looked at him for a long moment. There was no malice in his tone, just a weary truth. She considered telling him it was just chance, just timing, but even she didn't believe that. Something in Elara's question outside had broken through a wall she'd long stopped noticing. "Maybe I saw more than I wanted to," she admitted finally. "And maybe I didn't like what it said about me." Their food arrived quickly, plates steaming in the cozy light. Elara dove into her pancakes with quiet delight, cheeks flushing as the hot chocolate warmed her from the inside. Serena found herself watching her more than she meant to, the way she savored each bite, the way Callum gently cut the pancakes into small pieces without being asked. "You take good care of her," Serena said quietly. Callum didn't look up. "I try. It's not enough." His voice caught on that last word, barely audible. Something about the way he said it, not self-pitying, just honest, lodged itself in Serena's chest. She didn't press. Instead, she sipped her coffee, letting the silence between them settle like fresh snow. When the plates were nearly empty, Serena leaned forward. "Where are you staying tonight?" Callum's jaw tightened. "We'll figure it out." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." He met her eyes then, unflinching. "I told you, I'm not looking for handouts." Serena held his gaze. "And I'm not offering one." Her tone softened. "Just a roof for the night. I have space. You wouldn't be the first person I've helped." The refusal was on his lips before she even finished speaking. She could see it in the way his shoulders stiffened, the way his hand tightened around Elara's. But then, outside the fogged glass, that same black car rolled slowly past the diner window. This time Serena didn't imagine it. Callum noticed her glance. "You know them?" "Probably not," Serena said too quickly, "but I don't like being watched." Callum studied her for a beat longer, something unreadable in his expression. Then, with visible reluctance, he exhaled. "One night," he said. "That's all." Serena nodded, but her mind was already turning. Whoever was following her tonight had nothing to do with Callum and Elara, but that didn't make her any less uneasy. As they gathered their coats, she caught her reflection in the diner's glass door. A woman who looked like she was in control, though for the first time in years she didn't feel it. The city was quieter now, streets muffled under fresh snow. Serena led the way, her breath fogging in the bitter air, Callum and Elara following a pace behind. The diner's warmth clung to them faintly, but the cold claimed them again within minutes. Serena's phone buzzed inside her coat. She slipped it free without breaking stride, and froze. A single message lit the screen. "You're making a mistake." No name, no number, just black text on white. Her heartbeat ticked faster, but her face betrayed nothing. Serena Vale had been threatened before. It came with the territory when you negotiated billion-dollar deals and dismantled competitors with the stroke of a pen. But the timing, tonight of all nights, felt surgical. She slid the phone back into her coat just as Callum caught up. "Problem?" he asked, his voice roughened by the cold. "Nothing urgent." She kept walking, unwilling to hand a stranger her fear. Yet she found herself glancing at Elara, whose tiny boots crunched through the snow. Whatever this was, the child didn't need to feel it. At the curb, Serena's car waited. A black sedan, driver already holding the door open. Warm air spilled from the cabin, carrying the faint leather scent of privilege. Callum hesitated again, gaze flicking from the car to Serena. "This your idea of not charity?" he asked. "It's transportation," Serena replied evenly. "Not a gift." "Get in." Elara looked up at her father. "Daddy, it's warm." The innocence in her voice cut through his pride like a blade. Callum swallowed hard, then helped her climb in before following himself. Serena slid in last, shutting out the wind. The car purred through the snow-slick streets. City lights blurred past, gold and blue and white against the darkness. Serena sat opposite them in the rear-facing seat, studying Callum without meaning to. The exhaustion etched in his face looked older than 32. But there was something else, too. A stubborn strength, the kind you didn't see in boardrooms. "Where were you headed tonight?" she asked. "Anywhere that wasn't colder than the last place," he said simply. "Bus station benches if we had to." Elara's head had already sunk against his arm, eyes half closed. Serena looked away, unsure why that small sight tugged at her more than any closing bell or victory bonus ever had. The car turned down a quieter street, snow piling against the curbs. Serena's building loomed ahead, glass and steel, sharp lines cutting the night. Inside, the lobby lights glowed warm, a contrast to the storm outside. The driver parked at the entrance, stepping out to open the door. Serena exited first, scanning the street with a practiced glance. No black car, no sign of movement at all. Inside, the lobby was all marble and silence. The night concierge gave Serena a polite nod, eyes flicking briefly to Callum and Elara, a man in a threadbare coat, a child with sleepy eyes. Serena caught the glance and returned one of her own, sharp enough to cut short any questions. Upstairs, her penthouse smelled faintly of cedar and clean linen. The lights glowed soft and golden against polished floors. Callum stopped just inside the doorway, the weight of the place pressing down on him. Elara blinked awake, her small gasp betraying awe at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "You live here alone?" Callum asked quietly. Serena hung her coat with precise movements. "Yes. Why?" "Seems empty," he said. He wasn't looking at her when he said it, just at the space itself, all sleek surfaces and perfect order. Elara's fingers brushed a polished glass table, careful not to smudge it. "Daddy, it's like a castle," she whispered. Serena caught the way Callum's jaw tightened. Pride again, she thought. Even compliments made him wary. "I'll set up the guest room," Serena said briskly, moving toward the hallway. "There are clean sheets and a shower. Use them." Callum stayed where he was. "You do this often? Bring strangers home from the street?" Serena paused, then turned just enough to meet his eyes. "No. You're the first." The admission hung between them for a beat too long. Callum looked away first, gently settling Elara into an armchair while she fought sleep. Serena disappeared briefly and returned with towels, setting them on the armrest without ceremony. "You're sure about this?" Callum asked finally. "People might talk." "People always talk," Serena said simply. "It's what they're paid for." The corner of Callum's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Almost. Serena's phone buzzed again in her coat pocket. She checked it quickly, careful not to let her expression shift. "Last warning, don't get involved." The number was still blocked, and this time there was no mistaking the implication. Whoever sent it knew exactly where she was and who she was with. The penthouse was quiet now, save for the soft hum of the heating system and the distant thrum of the city below. Serena stood by the window, staring out at the snow-powdered streets 30 stories down. The same black car was there, unmoving, engine running, headlights dimmed to a pale amber glow. She didn't move for a long moment, her reflection staring back at her from the glass. The sight felt like a memory clawing up from years she'd spent burying. Men who watched, men who waited, deals that never fully stayed buried. Behind her, Callum emerged from the guest room. He'd laid Elara down at last. Her soft breathing carried faintly down the hallway. His hair was damp from the shower, his threadbare coat now folded neatly over the back of a chair. Even in clean clothes, ones Serena had loaned from an emergency guest closet, he carried the weight of cold streets and months of worry. "You're still dressed like you're ready for a fight," he said quietly, noticing her rigid stance. Serena didn't turn. "Maybe I am." He joined her at the window, following her gaze. When he spotted the car below, his shoulders stiffened. "Friend of yours?" "No." Serena's voice was steady, though her pulse betrayed her. "Not one I invited anyway." Callum studied her for a long moment. "You're not just some executive who took a wrong turn tonight, are you?" Serena almost smiled at that, sharp, humorless. "Everyone thinks they know me." "No one's ever right." Silence stretched between them. Below, the car didn't move. "I can take Elara and go," Callum said finally. "You've done enough. If someone's after you..." Serena turned on him so fast he stopped mid-sentence. "If someone's after me, you think walking out into the cold will keep you safe?" "I've handled worse," Callum said evenly. Serena's eyes hardened. "Not with a child in your arms, you haven't." The tension between them was sharp enough to cut. But before either could say more, Elara appeared at the hallway's edge, rubbing her eyes with small fists. "Daddy?" Her voice was tiny, uncertain. "I heard voices." Callum's face softened instantly. He crouched down, his voice gentler than Serena had yet heard it. "Just talking, sweetheart." "Go back to sleep." Serena knelt too, her expression shifting in a way even she didn't notice. "Do you want some warm milk?" she asked softly. Elara nodded, too tired to speak. Serena rose, crossing to the kitchen with practiced grace. A few minutes later, Elara was sipping from a mug almost as big as her hands, her eyelids drooping. Callum carried her back to bed, his steps slow and careful. Serena followed silently, watching how the hardened lines of his face softened whenever he looked at his daughter. When Elara was asleep again, Serena led Callum back to the main room. The city lights bled gold and blue through the windows, glinting off the glass tabletops and polished marble floors. "Tell me," Serena said suddenly, her voice quieter now. "How did you end up out there tonight?" "With her?" Callum didn't answer at first. He stood by the window looking down at the black car still idling below. Finally, he spoke without turning. "I was a mechanic," he said simply. "Good at it. Had a shop. Had a wife." His voice caught just slightly. "Lost them both. Wrong place, wrong time. Wrong choices after that." Serena waited. She knew better than to fill silences with pity. "I tried to hold it together for Elara," he went on. "Tried to keep a roof. Tried to keep her in school. But it's hard to fix engines when no one will hire you because you missed a court date after your whole world burned down." His hand clenched against the glass. "People see a man on the street and think he's broken. They don't see how hard he's fighting not to be." Serena looked at him for a long moment. For all her power, all her money, there was something in his quiet strength that unsettled her. "Maybe you're not as invisible as you think," she said softly. He turned to face her. "And you're not as untouchable as you think." Before Serena could answer, headlights shifted below. The black car pulled away from the curb, gliding down the street until its taillights vanished into the snow. Serena exhaled, only then realizing she'd been holding her breath. "Stay in the guest room tonight," she said firmly. "Both of you." Callum hesitated, searching her face for something she didn't name. Then he nodded once. "One night," he repeated. Serena watched him disappear down the hallway, the echo of his words following her long after. She returned to the window, staring at the empty street, wondering not just who had sent the messages, but why they cared about him. The soft chime of the elevator woke Serena like a thread snapping in her mind. She didn't check the clock. Instincts sharpened by years of careful living told her it was far too late for visitors. She slid out of bed without turning on a light. Bare feet on cold marble, every step calculated. The penthouse was silent. Too silent. Even the faint hum of the heating system seemed to have dimmed. At the end of the hallway, the private foyer door stood ajar, just enough for a sliver of darkness to creep inside. No one but her had the code. No one. A shape moved across the entryway. Not hurried, not clumsy. Someone who knew how to move without being heard. Serena's heart quickened, but her mind stayed sharp. She reached into the console drawer beside the doorframe and drew out the slim, matte black pistol she kept there. She didn't aim yet. She just held it low, close, silent as her own breath. Another shadow crossed the far wall, closer now, heading toward the guest wing, toward Callum, toward Elara. Serena stepped forward, the marble cool beneath her toes, and spoke barely above a whisper. "Wrong floor." The intruder froze. then, without warning, bolted toward the hallway. Serena moved fast, faster than anyone expected in bare feet. The pistol came up. "Stop, or I shoot!" The figure didn't stop. Instead, he twisted, shoving over a narrow glass table as he ran. It crashed, sharp and loud in the dark. From the guest room, a child's frightened cry. "Daddy!" Callum was awake instantly. The door flew open and Serena caught a glimpse of him, hair disheveled, eyes wide, before he darted into the hallway. "Elara, stay in the room!" The intruder lunged for the door panel, but Serena fired once, a warning shot that shattered the marble at his feet. He pivoted hard, retreating into the shadows of the penthouse itself. Not out. "Damn it," Serena muttered, moving after him. Callum appeared at her side, unarmed but furious. "Who is that?" "Not here to rob me," Serena said coldly. "He's here for you." The words stopped him cold, but only for a heartbeat. Together, they moved down the hallway, Serena's pistol steady, Callum searching for something to use as a weapon, a heavy vase, a marble bookend, anything. A faint creak came from the far side of the dining room. Serena nodded to Callum, and they split. She circling right, he moving left. In the darkness, the city lights threw long, sharp shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The intruder made his move. He sprinted for the balcony doors. Serena aimed, but he threw something metallic to the floor. It hissed and sparked, filling the room with blinding white smoke. "Get Elara," Serena shouted, coughing as acrid fumes bit her lungs. By the time they reached the balcony, the glass door was open, swinging in the winter wind. Far below, a black shape disappeared into an alley. Serena slammed the door shut, locking it, her jaw tight. Callum returned seconds later, Elara clutched to his chest, her small arms gripping his neck. She was trembling, but unharmed. "She's okay," he said, voice rough. "Who the hell was that?" Serena didn't answer right away. Instead, she crossed to the console table where the intruder had passed and picked up a small folded card. It hadn't been there before. 2 words written in precise block letters. "He knows." She read it once, then twice. Her fingers tightened around it until the paper crumpled. Callum saw her expression. Who knows what? Serena met his eyes, and for the first time since they met, there was no trace of her usual composure. "Someone who shouldn't," she said quietly. "And someone who doesn't make mistakes." The first gray light of morning filtered through the penthouse windows. Serena hadn't slept, neither had Callum. He sat on the edge of the guest bed, Elara curled against his chest as if keeping her in his arms could keep danger out. At exactly 6 a.m., Serena's private phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. She answered on the first ring. "Talk." The voice was calm, deep, and cold. "You have until sunset. Turn him over or the girl disappears." Serena's fingers tightened on the phone. "If you touch her..." The voice cut her off. "Not me." Someone already in the building. Someone you trust. Then a click. Serena lowered the phone slowly, her heartbeat like a drum. "They're already inside," she whispered. Callum stood, his jaw set. "I'm not hiding anymore. Whoever they are, they want me. Let them come." Serena shook her head sharply. "No, that's exactly what they want. They'll use her to control you. We move first." Within the hour, Serena's penthouse was a fortress. Private security swept every corner, locked down elevators, and sealed entrances. But as noon passed, a single security alert pinged Serena's tablet. A staff override from the service elevator, using her own access code. "Impossible," Serena muttered, racing for the hallway. They reached the elevator just as it opened. Out stepped her own head of security, Mason. Except he wasn't carrying his ID badge, only a silenced pistol. "Mason?" Serena's voice was ice. He didn't hesitate. "It's not personal." "Orders are orders." Callum shoved Elara behind him. "You'll have to go through me first." Serena moved without thinking. One shot, precise and clean. Mason dropped the weapon and fell to his knees, winded but alive. "Tell me who," Serena demanded, pressing her gun to his temple. Through gritted teeth, Mason said only 2 words. "The director." Callum froze. "He's supposed to be dead." Serena's eyes snapped to him. "You know who this is?" Callum nodded grimly. "He's the reason I left. The reason I've been running. And if he's alive, he won't stop until Elara's gone." Sirens echoed from below. Backup was coming. But Serena didn't wait. She grabbed Callum's arm. "We're not waiting for sunset. We end this now." They moved fast, vanishing into Serena's private garage. Elara bundled close while Mason's words echoed behind them. "He already knows where you're going." As Serena's car disappeared into the morning fog, a man watched from a rooftop across the street, smiling, phone in hand. "They're coming right to me," he murmured.